So it happened. The Apple event has come and gone, and they've released some new products that we kind of knew about, thanks to John Prosser at Front Page Tech and other various leakers across the board. We knew what was coming. But a lot of things happened in this presentation that were great, and then not so great, like weird things. And Apple actually got caught up in its own pre-release hype by the mainstream media, who misinterpreted what this thing was going to be about in the first place. It was really interesting to see what people expect in September and what they actually ended up getting. And one of those products was something that I've been talking about on my podcast, GadgetCast, and I couldn't figure out how they were going to do this. And they did it, and I'm blown away. But don't worry, I'm going to fill you all in on all that stuff. I'll tell you all about it right after this.
This is, you know you listening to Travis.
What up, players? Welcome back. And for all you new people, welcome. My name is Travis and I do tech videos every single week and have a blast doing them. If that sounds like fun to you, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. Anything I talk about will be in the description below. But for now, let's just get into the video. So let's talk about this Apple event and the things that they announced and the one product that kind of shocked me, along with some of the things that I thought weren't quite all that exciting. But before I talk about those products and features and stuff that they have released, the one thing that I found really interesting was how the mainstream media and people who are not like watching YouTube videos about leaks from Apple thought that this was going to be the iPhone release date. And that's, I mean, Apple should have seen this coming. Now, in fairness, Apple did tell people a couple of months ago on a call that the iPhones would be delayed, but most people, most people who like iPhones that don't watch YouTube videos had no idea that that was the case. On Twitter, iPhone 12 was trending before this whole thing went up, and people were hyped. It was pretty funny to watch. Because if you've been on YouTube for the last couple of weeks or even months, you knew that this presentation had nothing to do with the iPhone 12. While there was some controversy as to whether or not it might show up last second, there was never really an indication that the iPhone 12 would show up today, and it didn't. But the mainstream media and even just your average ordinary consumer doesn't really know that. They know that September is iPhone, and they see it trending on Twitter and they get hyped about it. But here's the thing. Apple could have gone out of their way and de-leveled the hype, because what ended up happening afterwards is so many people on Twitter who, again, were not super fans, were really disappointed in the presentation. Heck, one of my coworkers that loves tech had no idea that the iPhone 12 wasn't going to be in the presentation today. That's sad. So they could have said something and said, hey, the iPhone 12 is not going to be shown, but that also is kind of like telling people to not watch. And at one point when I was watching the live stream, there was over 1 million people watching live. That's crazy. Crazy. And that was just on YouTube. I mean, I know they're streaming everywhere, so it was a crazy event. But let's talk about some of the things that they released and some of the things they talked about. Let's start with the least interesting thing, Apple One. Now, this is a great move for Apple because it's just going to bring them more money. They're bundling all of their cool services into one price, which just makes it easier. It doesn't really save you a lot of money, but it does make it easier. You just pay for one thing, you get all the things you want, music and storage and all the things. If you want the news thing, I guess you could get that too. And Apple TV, which, by the way, there's a couple of great shows on Apple TV, and I'll probably be keeping mine for a while longer. But that really wasn't that interesting. We kind of had heard about that being announced before the presentation. And again, I mean, who really cares at the end of the day? This was about two products. Well, technically four, but two types of products, the Apple Watch and the iPad. The Apple Watch has two new products now, the Apple Watch SE and, of course, the Apple Watch Series 6. Now, aside from the colors, and those colors, man, those colors are so badass. I love it. There's not a whole bunch of difference between this Series 6 and the Series 5. I think the blood oxygen level thing is one of the main things. And it's got a couple of other little features, but to be perfectly honest, watch upgrades are more about the software, and some of the software that Apple is implementing on this is going to go across most of their watches. But at $400, only your hardcore Apple Watch fan who maybe has an older version of the watch is even going to get one. Unless they're first-time buyers. There's really no reason to, because the Apple Watch SE is quite interesting. The Apple Watch SE has pretty much everything that you would want in an Apple Watch, minus ECG, which is obviously a killer feature, or the opposite of killer feature, as it's actually saving people's lives. Whatever you want to call it. Anyway, it's a really great feature. But for $279, this is actually a great deal. But interestingly, the Apple Watch Series 3 is sticking around at $200. Still the best smartwatch in the game for $200. It's crazy. So we got an Apple Watch Series 6, which is not exactly lighting the place on fire, but it is interesting. The new colors look amazing. The screen looks great, and it's going to be fine. It's going to be a great watch But again, I'm personally not going to upgrade to it. I see no reason to. I have the Apple Watch Series 5. There really is no reason to. If you even have an Apple Watch Series 4, I could argue that you don't really need to upgrade that either. If you have a 3 or before and you really like your watch, I mean, maybe. The part that I was interested in is the iPad, because I love my iPad. I use my iPad Pro to edit all my videos here on the channel, and I love it. And Apple went and did something that's kind of crazy. But let's talk first about the iPad, not the iPad Air. Last time Apple refreshed the iPad, they did it at $329, and they've done it again, but this time adding the powerful A12 processor. They put that in the iPad Air of last year, and it's an incredible processor. Really, it is really an incredible processor. I can't say this enough. The last generation iPad Air has an A12 processor and can crush everything. It can take care of 4K, 6K footage. It can do videos. It can do rendering. It can do all the things. The A12 processor is amazingly powerful. And to put it into the base level iPad for $329, which by the way, last year Amazon put on sale for $249. So Amazon might be cutting the price on this thing. If you get this thing for under $300, especially around Black Friday, this is the best tablet deal, period. And the processing power is savage, which means it'll be getting upgrades and updates for years to come. But what was interesting is the upgrade in the iPad Air. Now, this one kind of blew me away, and this is what is really interesting about what Apple did, and it really confused me. As a matter of fact, we talked about this on my podcast, GadgetCast. Myself and Greg from Greg's Gadgets host a podcast called GadgetCast. It's really the best podcast on the internet. Links in the description below. I want to show you a clip from just this past week's show where we had Luke Miani on, and we talked about what the upgrade was going to look like for this new iPad Air, because the processor didn't make sense to release a processor that's faster than the current generation processor in the smartphone that Apple is selling. It didn't make sense, and this is what we said.
It's going to look like the iPad Pro pretty much.
A couple weeks ago, I still don't understand how they're not. I mean, what are they taking away from it that doesn't immediately eat up the 11-inch iPad Pro? Like, it's going to have USB-C, right? Like, we're pretty sure of that.
Yeah.
I would bet that's actually a really good point, because now that you mention that, I don't think it'll have A14 in it, because the A14 is going to be very, very close to the performance of an A12X, and Apple's sort of tiered system. I don't think they're going to do that.
So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. Luke, you might not have heard this. We figured that they're in a pickle because the current A12 is in the current iPad Air, which is a processor, right? They're not going to put the 12 in this. Doubtful that they would. I mean, maybe they would go lateral. When's the last time they did that? It's possible. They're probably not. When's the last time we heard an A13 in anything besides these phones? Like, I mean, I don't see.
I mean, we don't have any iPads with A13 in it.
Exactly. Like, I mean, they could. It just seems like a weird thing, right? And they're definitely not going to put.
I'm actually wondering now. Okay, I'm gonna let me do some. I gotta look something up here, because I've been thinking about that too. You know, it's a very weird situation. And I think they really are in a pickle. I don't know if their plans have changed as a result of that, but it seems to me that A14 would only make sense if this product came out after a new generation iPad Pro, but it's not. It's coming out before. So the fact that it's coming out before iPad Pro, before the iPhone itself, I think rules out introducing A14, because I don't think Apple introduces new processors in non-flagship devices.
No. And A13 maybe, or maybe they just do a hooty-hoo and give you like an A12X. You know, you go back to the last year's Pros processor, because you've already, quote, superseded it with the 2020, which is a bunk of hooey, as we know, but at least it looks like it's still a previous generated When's the last time, besides the Air, for the most part, processors and iPads are never the same processor as like the phone that comes out that year. So that pretty much, again, knocks out A14. A13 just seems like a weird move. So I
think it's probably going to be a 13, to be honest.
The iPad Air was already powerful when it came out. The A12 made sense, so maybe the A13, but the A14, are you serious? That isn't even out on their phones. And just so you know, Apple doesn't typically release a processor in an iPad before it gets released in the phone. This has apparently only ever happened one other time. They introduced the processor with the phone, not with the iPad. And that kind of blows me away, because that's one of the big features of the phone, is to talk about the processor. And they've already kind of blown the load on this. So this thing is going to be super, super powerful. And they put it in basically a 2018 version of the iPad Pro. Like, it looks just like the iPad Pro. This thing is going to start eating into the 11-inch iPad Pro. It's a 10.8-inch iPad with USB-C. I mean, listen, hold on. I thought that was for pros. Now we're just putting it in Airs now? What is going on here? Touch ID, it does take away Face ID, which I actually love on the iPad Pros. It's super fast. So maybe that's one of the things you're missing. You're also missing ProMotion. You're not getting 120 hertz. And your starting out storage is 64 gigs. But pretty much everything else makes this an iPad Pro. It is literally crazy that they just refreshed the iPad Pro this year with very little upgrade, a processor upgrade which was almost nothing, and an extra camera that you never really want to use on a tablet anyway. And then you come out with essentially the same, if not just slightly less better iPad later in better colors. Like, those colors are awesome. In my opinion, they basically gutted the 2020 11-inch iPad Pro. There's only ProMotion that's pretty much saving it from it, and Face ID. I mean, really, who cares? You save a lot of money. Now, of course, the storage does make a difference. Of course, you're going to want more storage, but it doesn't make sense. Why did Apple do this? They kind of put themselves in a corner with this, where the technology kept going faster, but they made the iPad Air pretty much in line with whatever phone they released this year. Now, the reason this year that we're probably seeing the iPads get the jump on the processor is obviously the delay. This year, the iPhone 12s have been delayed mostly due to coronavirus. Had coronavirus not happened, we would probably be seeing the iPhone right now, and it would make a lot more sense. So while this is a strange move on Apple's part, the reality is they were kind of pushed into it. I think they could have waited and shown the iPads with the iPhones, but they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to put it all together. I guess they're going to have a really big presentation for the iPhones. Whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter. They decided to take it on the chin this time. I don't suspect that this is going to be a new thing. Showing the new processor with the iPhone is what they've always done. So I don't know what to think about this. The iPad Air is amazing. And at $600, it's for me, it's about $100 too much, but only because of the storage. If it was 128 gigs, really, I would say just get rid of the iPad Pro 11-inch. At this point, my friend Greg from Greg's Gadgets said you should just go ahead and get rid of the 11-inch iPad Pro, make the 12.9, make a 12-inch version of the Pro, and then keep the 13-inch version of the iPad Pro, and then just have this middle version of the iPad Air. I don't get what Apple's up to. I've never seen them make a product that basically eats into the other product. It's nuts. But tell me in the comments below, what do you think? Did Apple just own themselves by making a product that's basically better than one of their other products, or at least darn near as good for a lot less money? Leave me a comment below, and also make sure you check out this video and one of these as well. I'll see you next time. Peace and love.